providing the soundtrack for people's lives. That's what we do as musicians. And it doesn't matter whether you're a recording artist or playing with one, or you're playing down at your local bar, playing somebody's wedding. It doesn't matter any of that. What you're doing is you're providing the soundtrack for some of the greatest moments in people's lives. And that's powerful, man. That is a very powerful thing. You think about it. And I was thinking about, for some reason, man, it popped into my head. Maybe it was a song I was listening to on the radio. I was thinking about my old friend, Michael Wagner, legendary producer, produced literally the soundtrack of a young metalhead's life. And think about all the time you spent, whether it was in a studio or, writing the songs or, producing, dude. Producing music takes hours upon hours. How many days and nights did people back in the day, before AI, when you had to make music the real way, when you had to do things, on the up and up, how many days and nights, sleepless days and nights, standing over a mixing board, tweaking the sound, trying to get the guitar sound just right, trying not let the bass frequencies overtake the other instruments, trying to get the right drum sound. Back in the day, dude, they might spend a week just getting drum sounds. Now everything is instant. But like instant coffee, it's not as good as something that's brewed from scratch and made with love. This gets me back to playing the soundtrack of people's lives. And, man, think about it. A lot of times a guy like a producer like that or an artist, spends so much time maybe in an insular, network of, working with the players that they're working with, maybe spending time away from their family, away from the world, and not out living their lives, but they're creating that music that is the soundtrack for everybody else. And most people don't maybe think about that. The people that made the music, and I can remember being a kid, and I'm sure a lot of people in the comments can comment on this, but man, there were many times where there'd be something like a homecoming parade or a high school football game or something, and I would just skip it because I wanted to stay home and practice. I wanted to stay home and write songs. I wanted to work on my craft. The same thing goes for if you're on the road. You're on the road playing somebody's Saturday night on a random Tuesday in Oklahoma, then you're probably potentially missing some monumental event of your family or your wife. Maybe you're missing somebody in your family's funeral because you're on that tour bus and that's how you pay your bills. And it doesn't stop for one person. You think about hundreds of people whose salaries depend on the 4 or 5 musicians that are up on stage. You don't get to take those nights off. When somebody passes, you have to call and go, I'm really sorry, and I wish I could be there. And you send flowers. And that's all you can do. You miss those moments. You miss You miss moments if somebody you love has to go to the hospital, or there's an issue with your kids or your family or whatever. And that's the toll that providing the soundtrack for everybody else, or providing the party for everybody else, that's maybe an unseen price that we musicians pay. That's maybe an unseen price. And like I said, man, if you're playing somebody's wedding, it's the greatest day of somebody's life. And if the wedding doesn't work out, well, then maybe it's just another moment they choose to forget later on in life. But it's still an important day. It's still important. And that moment is everything. That moment is the be all end all of their life, or so they think at that time. And look, man, being lucky to getting to play on a few things that, may live on. They may live on a little bit after I'm gone from this realm. I can remember being on the road and playing these things. We used to call them mud bogs. Play these huge, it's like a redneck festival on steroids. You'd have these rednecks with these, hundreds of thousands of dollars sunk into these jacked up trucks. And they would be running through these mud bogs, flags flying and everything. And I'd be getting on the bus or, walking off the bus, and I'd hear some giant truck that's like, $150,000 truck. And they're blasting some riff, some power chord that I played on in the studio. And knowing in the back of my head, wow, man, that guy's driving. He might not even know that's my guitar, man. Or being up in Philly and playing a show, and country music radio is playing on the cafe where I'm having lunch, and I'm hearing my guitar playing in the background on a song I just played on, and it's creeping up the charts. It's got some momentum, and knowing that, man, I was probably 45 years old, knowing that this is a surreal moment. These are moments that, man, you work your whole life for. And most of the time you don't get moments like that. I mean, the guys that play on hundreds of hit songs and hundreds of albums and all that, man, that's rare air. Most of us will never achieve that. And that kind of pressure cooker of doing that's not something I really wanted to exist in all the time. The joy for me of playing music was having complete freedom to play whatever and however I wanted to play, as inside or outside as I wanted to play. That's not the game when you're trying to squeeze a song. You're trying to squeeze a song into the system. That's not that game at all. So I was happy to dip my toe in that world, and knowing that I can't play the same way on this gig that I would play down at 3rd and Lindsley, filling in for Reggie Wooten. Totally different type of gig, man. But, sacrificing enough and getting the chance to play on something that, the crazy thing you think about now, the artist I used to play for is still on the road. Some of those parts that I played on that record, Somebody else might be playing those parts, or maybe there's backing tracks or whatever. Somebody on the way to that concert might be playing the original track. And there's my power chords ringing out in the mix. And that's an amazing thing, man. Meanwhile, I'm just a guy walking in the Florida heat, trying to survive, to live, to post another day. Live to post another day. And man, it's these things that I think about, man. I think about the guys that did, produce all those albums and how much time that they had to spend working on something, right? And sometimes you work on something a long time and it comes out and it's just forgotten. Or it's not realized that it's good. It doesn't find its audience. And sometimes you might play on something that literally took you 10 minutes to a half hour of your time. And that goes on to be something that's remembered for eternity. And man, for everybody that's out there, playing gigs this weekend and providing music for people, well, that's a noble cause, man. It's not easy. It's not easy playing music and recreating somebody else's parts, playing songs that people want to hear and entertaining people. But we do it because we know we're bringing joy. We do it because we're helping people enjoy their lives. We do it because it's a way for people to get away from all the trouble that they have inside their head. All the pain of everyday life seems to wash away once you hear a melody from your past, right? Once you hear a song that you love, sometimes it can just change the mood of the day. It can get you through a tough moment, or it can bring you to tears. But music is what unites us all. Music is why we do this. Not for fame, not for glory, not for anything but joy of singing a song. The joy of providing a moment for people to forget their troubles, forget their problems, and to get away from it all. And that's powerful, man. That's powerful. It's a privilege to get to play music for a living. It's a privilege, and it's going to be harder and harder for people to do that. It's going to be harder for people to survive in the music business. It never seems to get easier. It always seems to get harder. There's always younger guys coming up who will work for half of what the peanuts that you were working for. I've had multiple people in the comments say that the money has not gone up since the 70s or the 80s. I have not heard anybody come to me and go, "Oh man, those guys they're really making bank now." Now everything has gotten squeezed. Everybody's getting squeezed everywhere you turn. Everybody is getting squeezed, and profit margins are even smaller. So there is no chance that the musician gets a break. There's no chance that, let's start paying those guys. And even the guys that are making bank, the guys that are headlining arenas and stuff like that, Dude, I hear stories all the time of the money guys going, hey, you paying these musicians a lot of money. We could sure save a lot of money if we just paid them per show, or if we just cut their salary back, or we just fire all the old guys and hire a bunch of young guys for peanuts. Dude, don't think I haven't been on a bus and have an artist's wife come on the bus and say, oh, I saw what you guys are getting paid each year. And man, I said, well, heck, if we didn't have to pay them so much, I could get new curtains. Literally, that's the kind of nonsense that you would hear. Knowing that I'm not I'm not rolling in the benzo with Lorenzo. I'm not living in a friggin' mansion. So to think that somebody would come on the bus and insinuate that we're overpaid for being away from our families, our loved ones, important events in our lives, giving it all up to support this artist, dude, that is a crock of sheet. But man, you're still lucky if you get the chance to do it. You're still lucky if you get to play music for a living. And even if it's just a little side hustle for the weekend warrior, why do we do it? We ain't doing it to get rich. We do it because spreading good vibes, playing music makes us feel good. And when we feel good, we spread that energy out to the world. We spread positive vibes. We help people feel better. We make them forget about their problems and give them a beat they can dance to. And when it's all said and done, that's all any of this is. And if you spent weeks and days and nights and on and on and on producing music, most of the time, a lot of time, a producer is in there by himself, working under a deadline and trying to get the perfect mix. And the wife is calling, when are you coming home? Oh, I can't come home right now. I've almost got this mix dialed in. I've almost got it. And a lot of times, dude, people at home don't understand. Nobody understands what we go through. And that's why a lot of musicians, producers, that's why a lot of them don't stay married. They have multiple wives over their lifetime. Because trying to find somebody to understand that I've got to do this right now. I've got to put this time in. This has got to be a success, or else we're going to have a problem paying that for that nice mansion that you wanted me to buy. We're going to have a tough time paying for that pool installation that the wife demanded. So the business leads to you having to work, having to keep grinding, to miss important things in your life in order to stay relevant, or in order to, produce a hit, dude. Can you imagine the pressure if you accidentally wrote a hit song? What if you got together with some buddies from college? And this used to happen a lot in the 60s. College band would get together. They'd write some hit song. After they'd had a couple beers in their garage, they'd go into some makeshift studio, crank out something like Louie Louie or any one of those garage hits, from psychedelic hits from back in the day. And it become a hit. They get signed. They get signed, it becomes a hit. And then 3 or 4 months later, they go, the producer or the record label A&R guy goes, oh, well, what else you got? And you try and recreate lightning in a bottle. You try and recreate, genius, the genius of spontaneity. And now the spontaneity is gone. Now it's pressure, right? And nobody works good under pressure, man. When you try to force music, when you try to, force and write a hit, when you really try to do something, it's like trying to get a date, You stop trying and just make yourself somebody that people want. Stop trying to write a hit song and just be somebody that creates hits. Living in the moment, capturing a spark. But man, many people might only have one hit in them. And that's the case, man. It's a tough ride down. It's tough to come down from being the toast of the town and everybody blasting your song on the radio, pulling into the drive-in, cranking your hit song in their station wagon. And I'm talking about retro days, right? 60s, 70s. And then 6 months later, everybody's moved on to something else. And you're holed up in a room with your guys and you're a producer and you're trying to recapture that magic. And man, more often than not, it just doesn't happen. But you know what? That's okay, man. That's okay, because many of those one-hit wonders, man, they got to experience something. They got to be the soundtrack of people's lives. And look, man, I imagine there's a band somewhere in the world right now playing Louie Louie somewhere. Maybe it's in Thailand, or maybe it's in Nepal, or maybe it's in Dubuque, or maybe in Little Rock. Some bar band might be hammering out Wooly Bully or Louie Louie or, Twisted Shout or something like that. And it goes on and on. So, while music has a shelf life, somewhere in the world, man, your forgotten song could be the soundtrack to someone's current state of mind. And that's a powerful thing to think about.